Lesson objectives are the first thing we need to think about as teachers in preparing our lesson. Most of the time, these objectives become the primary basis when we decide about the support instructional materials to be used, the methods or approach to present our lesson, and the assessment strategy to measure our students' learning. In view of this, here are the principles in determining and formulating goals and objectives which are adopted from Corpus and Salandaman. Begin with an end in mind. This implies that we need to have clearly defined objectives in our lesson, wherein these objectives give our lesson a purpose and a goal that we need to aim at the end of a class period. The objectives are like our destination in a long and winding road. If we know where our destination is, then all we need to do is to think and perform significant ways to reach it. Impart to the students the lesson's objectives. Some teachers tend to start a lesson without sharing to the students the objective for the day. Learning becomes collaborative and is not solely controlled by the teacher, so partaking objectives gives the students the opportunity to embrace the lessons both as their personal and class target. Objectives must be holistic. These must include the three domains which we are about to discuss later. Teachers should adhere to the CPA objectives so to make learning holistic. The idea of having CPA objectives implies that as teachers, we don't want to have only one dimension given focus in our teaching and learning process. For students to become well-rounded individuals, teachers need to address each domain, most especially the affected domain, to make learning more meaningful. Make the lesson objectives relevant to students' lives. As teachers, it is needed to explain to students that the lesson objectives are applicable in their lives and is useful in their homes, in school, or in their future work, so their motivation in learning the topic won't become any less. You don't want your students to think that what they're being taught of is futile. Lesson objective must coincide with the general aims of the Constitution as well as the vision and mission of the Department of Education and the educational institution we are working with. Our instructional objectives must spring out of the broader aims as stated in our laws. The objectives, even in the classroom level, still must contribute to the realization of the vision and mission statement of the school, the department, and the general aim as a whole based on the Constitution. Lesson objectives must aim for higher order thinking skills. Our objectives should not be settled on merely repetition of facts. To make students lifelong learners, they need to develop critical and creative skills so that they will not just receive existing knowledge but generate new knowledge and ideas. As the cliché goes, teachers need to teach students not what to learn, but how to learn. Metacognition should be also developed. Lastly, lesson objectives should be SMART, which stands for specific, measurable, attainable, result-oriented, and time-bound. Earlier, the three domains of learning were associated with the learning objective that is concerned with being holistic. So what are the three domains of learning? These domains are cognitive, that deals with thinking, affective, that is related with emotion or feeling, and psychomotor, that deals with physical and kinesthetic. Each domain has a taxonomy associated with it. Taxonomy is simply a word for a classification. The following taxonomies are arranged so that they proceed from the simplest to more complex levels. Knowledge, remembering or retrieving previously learned material. Comprehension, the ability to grasp or construct meaning from material. Application, the ability to use learned material or to implement material in new and concrete situations. Analysis, the ability to break down or distinguish the parts of material into its components so that its organizational structure may be better understood. Synthesis, the ability to put parts together to form a coherent or unique new whole. Evaluation, the ability to judge, check, and even critique the value of a material for a given purpose. Anderson and Krathwohl's Taxonomy, 2001. First, remembering. Recognizing or recalling knowledge from memory. Remembering is when memory is used to produce or retrieve definitions, facts, or lists, or to recite previously learned information. Understanding. Constructing meaning from different types of functions, be they written or graphic messages, or activities like interpreting, exemplifying, classifying, summarizing, inferring, comparing, or explaining. Applying. Carrying out or using a procedure through executing or implementing. Applying relates to or refers to situations where learned material is used through products like models, presentations, interviews, or simulations. Analyzing. Breaking materials or concept into parts, determining how the parts relate to one another or how they interrelate, or how the parts relate to an overall structure or purpose. Evaluating. Making judgments based on criteria and standards through checking and critiquing. Creating. Putting elements together to form a coherent or functional whole. Reorganizing elements into a new pattern or structure through generating, planning, or producing. Receiving. This refers to the learner's sensitivity to the existence of stimuli, such as awareness, willingness to receive, or selected attention. Responding. This refers to the learner's active attention to stimuli and his or her motivation to learn, such as acquiescence, willing responses, or feelings of satisfaction. Valuing. This refers to the learner's beliefs and attitudes of worth, such as acceptance, preference, or commitment. Organization. This refers to the learner's internalization of values and beliefs involving 1. The conceptualization of values, and 2. The organization of a value system. As values or beliefs become internalized, the learner organizes them according to priority. Characterization. The internalization of values. This refers to the learner's highest of internalization and relates to behavior that reflects 1. A generalized set of values, and 2. A characterization or a philosophy about life. At this level, the learner is capable of practicing and acting on their values or beliefs. Reflex movements. Objectives at this level include reflexes that involve one segmental or reflexes of the spine and movements that may involve more than one segmented portion of the spine as intersegmental. Fundamental movements. Objectives in this area refers to skills or movements or behaviors related to walking, running, jumping, pushing, pulling, and manipulating. Perceptual abilities. Objectives in this area should address skills related to kinesthetic, visual, auditory, touch, or coordination abilities as they are related to the ability to take in information from the environment and react. Physical abilities. Objectives in this area should be related to endurance, flexibility, agility, strength, reaction response time, or dexterity. Skilled movements. Objectives in this area refers to skills and movements that must be learned for games, sports, dances, performance, or for the arts. Non-discursive communication. Objectives in this area refer to expressive movements through posture, gestures, facial expressions, and/or creative movements like those in mime or ballet. Additionally, when possible, teachers should attempt to construct more holistic lessons by using all three domains in learning tasks. This diversity helps to create more well-rounded learning experiences and meets a number of learning styles and learning modalities. Here are some important brain-based learning concepts, things every teacher and parent should know. Observe the qualities in the selection and organization of content. Go beyond facts. Provide opportunities for experimentation, learning through and with others. Emphasize conceptual understanding. Integrate cognitive, affective, and skill. Now, let's proceed to structure of subject matter content. First, cognitive, concerned with facts, concepts, principles, hypotheses, theories, and laws. Skill, refers to thinking skills as well as manipulative skills. Affective, values and attitudes. One of the root of instructional planning is lesson plan. A lesson plan is a detailed description of the individual lessons that a teacher plans to teach on a given day. A lesson plan is developed by a teacher to guide instruction throughout the day. It is a method of planning and preparation. The importance of lesson plans. It provides a coherent framework for smooth, efficient teaching. It helps the teacher to be more organized. It gives a sense of direction in relation to the syllabus. It helps the teacher to be more confident when delivering the lesson. It provides a useful basis for future planning. It helps the teacher to plan lessons which cater for different students. It is a proof that the teacher has taken a considerable amount of effort in his or her teaching. Types of lesson plans. 5-step lesson plan. A 5-step lesson plan is a form of daily lesson planning that includes the following components: anticipatory set, instruction, guided practice, closure or assessment, and independent practice. 5E lesson plan. The 5E lesson plan format asks teachers to list components that deal with engaging, explaining, exploring, elaborating, and evaluating. Weekly lesson plan. A weekly lesson plan is an ideal format for teachers who are covering a similar topic throughout the week. At the top of the lesson plan, teachers should list the standards, objectives, and essential questions being covered that week. Unit plan. For teachers who do not work well with elaborate plans, a unit plan is a simple way to guide instruction. At the top of the unit plan, teachers list all of the standards and objectives covered in the unit along with the projected time frame for the unit. Inquiry-based lesson plan. Inquiry-based lesson plans are especially useful for the science classroom because they involve experimentation and hands-on activities that allow the teacher to be a facilitator of learning rather than an instructor. Basic steps in lesson planning. Objective. Without having the end game clearly in mind, meaningful learning is not going to take place. Materials list. Your materials list is that slew of resources, articles, or manipulatives that you'll need to make the lesson shine. The hook. You need to hook your students' attention and keep it for all kids need to feel a connection to the lesson. You can bring that to them in your lesson, be it in via video, movie clip, or challenging question. Make it fun, creative, and surprising. The steps through your procedures. Working up how to best proceed in your lesson is important. If we return to our cake recipe, we have our procedures for adding the ingredients to the mixing bowl. If we neglect to follow them, we might end up with a disaster. The same is true for our lessons. The steps through your procedures are the steps in making the cake itself. Lastly, the assessment. How can you say it's a wrap without finishing the cake flawlessly? Did you do a quick assessment as students left the room? You can use all kinds of varied activities to check for understanding that don't include formal test taking. The parts of a lesson plan. First, objectives. Example. Second, subject matter. Example. Third, procedure. A. Learning activities. B. Lesson proper, where you will start with presentation, and then motivation, discussion, analysis, and generalization. Fourth, evaluation. Example. Lastly, assignment. Here's an example. The behavioral objectives. Behavioral objectives that are useful in the classroom must meet certain criteria. The 4 essential elements of a well-written behavioral objectives are: good behavioral objectives are student-oriented. A behavioral objective, which is student-oriented, places the emphasis upon what the student is expected to do, not upon what the teacher will do. Good behavioral objectives describe learning outcomes. It is the learning outcome that is important, not the learning activities that should lead to the outcome. Good behavioral objectives are clear and understandable. It should contain a clearly stated verb that describes a definite action or behavior and, in most cases, should refer to an object of that action. Good behavioral objectives are observable. The evaluation of learning outcomes hangs on the ability to observe those outcomes. Here are guidelines for writing lesson plans. First, consider your destination. Second, sequence your objectives. Third, know your time frame. Fourth, create activities to meet your objectives. 5. Check for understanding. In order to make an exceptional approach on how to make students learn, one must follow the proper guidelines. Although teachers tend to conduct the same process, it depends on how one will make her teaching a little extra special, either by sprinkling extra ingredients to the cake or leaving it as simple as possible. The important thing is the knowledge teachers are willing to share with their students and on what way they make imparting knowledge effective. So, given all the information, what is your instructional planning?